Well, thank you so much for your welcome. It's really nice to be with you here in Taunton. So much appreciated. So the Gospel according to Mark chapter 7 and verse 37 says this. It's speaking of Jesus, and they say, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to talk." You're looking together, I think, at the Gospel according to Mark. The cosmic drama unfolds. This book should come with a warning. If you understand the drama that is being unfolded here, you won't be the same again. This is not just any old book. This is gospel. And that means it speaks into the human heart and changes people. You have been warned. A short reading from the Old Testament. Here, the prophet is looking forward to the time when God is going to rescue his people from exile and bring them home. Because, you see, God's judgment has come upon them, and they are spiritually deaf and spiritually blind. They couldn't hear and respond to God's commandments. They couldn't see what God was doing. And now God is saying, I'm going to act one day and restore my people. And so we read in the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 35, verses 5 and 6, Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened. Then the ears of the deaf will be unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like the deer. The tongue of the speechless will sing for joy. So a bit of a recap. This is my account of what's happened in the story so far. It's a bit like if you're watching a drama on the television, you start a new episode and that sign comes up and says, or the words come up, last time on. And then if you're watching on the computer, you can hit the button that says skip the recap. No button today. Now, Richard, I don't know, may have a slightly different approach to the story. It's not a contest, but he's probably right. But today you're going to get my version. You see, Jesus has been announced by John the Baptist. And after Jesus' baptism, he launches his campaign in Galilee. We're out in the sticks. We are a long way from the center of power. But Jesus is telling people there that the kingdom of God is at hand. Another way to express this is, get your priorities right, because God is becoming king. And he starts recruiting people who don't necessarily fully understand what's going on, but have caught something of the idea, even if they haven't fully understood it yet. And Mark is kind of going all the time, who does this man think he is? Now, if God is becoming king, it surely suggests to us that the people currently have a different king. Even if they don't know it, their true allegiance lies somewhere else. So what happens when you get a choice between different kings? Well, you get a conflict. This drama is a conflict between kingdoms, between who you're going to obey, between who's in charge, between alternative kings. And on one side, it's Jesus speaking for God, and on the other side, well, all kinds of people. And all kinds of places who are not truly loyal to God. Well, there's the unclean spirits, and then there's the illnesses and sicknesses that afflict the population, and the religious leaders of the day. Oh yes, and the tetrarch, the one we call King Herod. They're all lined up on the other side. And Jesus enters into this conflict, which is a cosmic conflict, because he's not just fighting them, he's fighting the spiritual powers that lie behind them. He's taking them all on. And we have to ask, who does he think he is? And he tells these stories of the transformation that is coming. And the people who are on board with the project and are listening carefully, whose ears are opened, well, they get some kind of insight into what God is up to. But the others go away thinking, well, that was a nice story. Don't you think that was a nice story? But nothing happens in their hearts. And then he appoints a group of 12 people around himself, echoing the very beginnings of Israel, which was out of 12 tribes. You remember the story? And those who understand are going, hang on, he's starting Israel over again. He's refounding the people of God around himself. Who does he think he is? And then his words are announcing that God is king, and the line between him and God is getting blurred. And his actions are signs pointing to what it's going to be like when the kingdom of God comes in its fullness. Sometimes I go to the supermarket, and I especially like it when they're giving things away. You know, sometimes you get a kind of sample, and you try it, and you think, nah, not for me. Or you think, oh, that's great, I'll get some of that. Well, Jesus, in his stories and in his actions, is giving you a sample of what the kingdom of God is going to be like. And if you get it, if it resonates with you, then you've got to buy into it. And you've got to buy into it wholesale. It's no good thinking, well, maybe a little bit. It's all or nothing, because this is a conflict, and in a conflict, you have to choose sides. Although you might be asking yourself, who does he think he is? And then comes the storm on the sea. Do you remember? And he calms the wind, and the rain stops. He's in charge of the weather. Oh, yes, please. And he's giving hints about answers to great questions, but he's always being enigmatic. He's kind of keeping some aspects of what's going on a secret. He avoids being explicit. On the Jewish side of the lake, he forbids people from spreading the news. On the Gentile side, where the non-Jewish people live, he's a bit more relaxed about people speaking about him. Perhaps there's less chance of a misunderstanding over there. And then he goes for a kind of reenactment of things that God has done in the great stories of the people in the past. Do you remember after the Exodus, God fed the people as they walked through the desert with manna from heaven, bread from heaven? Well, Jesus feeds a whole host of people in the wilderness. And then he tops that off by walking across the water, like God puts his footprints on the sea. And we're asking, who does he think he is? Who is Jesus? And once you've figured that out, you have to ask, well, what's that going to mean for Jesus? And then you have to ask, what's that going to mean for you? And this pattern continues into chapter 7. The reader knows there's this cosmic battle going on. God's kingdom is coming up against the enemy. The stakes could not be higher. And then there's this story in the first 13 verses of the chapter that some of Jesus' friends are eating without ritually washing their hands. And the Pharisees, who you remember on the other side of this conflict, are going, "Oh, look, we've caught you out, we've caught you out." There's a cosmic battle going on, and they're arguing about rituals. There's a war. And they're arguing about things which are clearly trivial. Imagine a firefighter goes into a building that's burning and comes out carrying a child on each shoulder, and instead of going, "Oh, fantastic, what a hero," you go, "No, I'm sorry, you've got to take them back into the building, come back out again because there's a button missing from your uniform. Sew that back on, then you can go in again and rescue them." You're missing the point. And Jesus says to them, you've abandoned the whole point of God's commandments. You claim God is your king, but it's clearly not true. You're holding to human traditions. You cannot hear what God is saying. You can't see what's actually happening in front of your nose. And Jesus presses home his point in the next section. Verses 17 to 23. See, what's the thing that really matters in all of this? What is it that really needs rescuing? Where is it that God is not king? And his answer is the human heart. It's what goes on there that's the real problem. It's not what goes in that matters, it's what comes out of there that matters. It's not what we eat, but who we are. That's the problem. That's the vital battleground. Well, after this, Jesus needs a bit of a break. There's got to be a cooling off period. Jesus needs to get ready because he knows the final assault is coming. He knows, come chapter 8, come next time, he's going to be declaring who he truly is. And that's going to mean he's going to head off to the center of power because everything until now has been going on in the periphery. And so what he does is he goes off well to the north and to the west coast. And the word about him has even reached there. And he encounters a woman. She's heard about Jesus. She's heard that he heals Jews and non-Jews. She's heard that he casts out demons. She asks for her daughter to be healed. And Jesus tests her faith. There's a lesson for her and for us. She has understood that this cosmic battle is not just about Israel. It's about the whole of the world. It includes her and her family, and her daughter is healed. Who does he think he is? Who does the woman think he is? Who do we think he is? And the passage goes on to the passage that was read for us so beautifully in two languages. It's a long time since I've heard a Bible reading in tongues. Jesus goes north to Sidon, then east around the other side of the sea. He encounters a man who can neither hear nor speak, like the person in Isaiah's prophecy. Jesus is still not quite ready to reveal his hand, but he's leaving clues everywhere. And even the people who are not Jewish have seen it. They're starting to get it. He's taking territory in this conflict in the pagan lands to the north and now to the east. He's healed the daughter of a pagan woman. Now it's confirmed beyond doubt that the kingdom of God is dawning not just in Israel, but in the whole of the world. And the conflict between the kingdoms is reaching a crescendo. Soon these skirmishes on the margins are going to be over, and the battle will be taken to the very center of power. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because you know where it's going to end. It's going to end at the cross. It's going to end at the resurrection. It's going to end in apparent defeat and then victory. And then the question will be put to you, and you must decide in this great drama, whose side are you on? Now, this is the last healing in the first half of the gospel. There's 4 of these healings, all about deafness and blindness, and they're all about the prophecy of Isaiah, and they all run parallel to the changing understanding of the disciples. Jesus takes the man aside and heals him. He instructs everyone to keep quiet, and they can't. They've heard, they've understood, and they too are no longer unable to speak, but must speak. Now, Mark, this astonishing book, works as history, but given the way that Mark tells the story, it's a bit like journalism, because everything moves on so quickly from one thing to the next. But it's also theology. Mark has a million stories he could tell, but he picks the ones that make the point that he wants to make, and he puts them in the order he does to try to get the reader and us to make a verdict. This is something done in private, but it can't be hidden. Silence is commanded, but everybody talks. And the next step won't just be the unclean spirits of the religious leaders. The conflict that lies behind what's on the surface is with sin and with death. And they're coming next. And he's going to take them on in their own headquarters. Isaiah's prophecy is being fulfilled. God is doing what he's always promised. Now do you hear? Now do you get it? Who does he think he is? The people of God have been deaf. Now their ears can be opened. The people of God have been unable to speak about God, but now they can announce boldly. The long exile in sin is about to be over. Did you ever have that experience where someone is telling you something and you understand all the words, but you're missing the point? Has that ever happened to you? I was very small, and my family and I were on a caravan holiday in Wales. And my younger brother and I had made friends with a boy who was in one of the neighbouring caravans. And then one day, he was out with his dog. And we said, like you do, "Oh, you've got a dog. What's your dog called?" And the boy says, "It's called Corgi." So we look at the dog, and it's obviously a Corgi. And my brother says, yeah. But what's its name? And the boy says, Corgi. And my brother tries again, all patience. Yes, I know what type of dog it is. I want to know his name. And the boy says, Corgi. And my brother at this point is starting to get a little exasperated. When we chatted to this lad before, he hadn't seemed completely stupid. I'm starting to smile by this point because I figured it out as you have. Finally, we managed to persuade my brother that this dog is a Corgi called Corgi. And my brother's walking away muttering, a stupid name for a dog anyway. But it takes a while. You hear what people are saying, but you don't understand. That's what the people of Israel were like. They hear, but they don't get it. They're deaf to what's really going on. It says in chapter 4, when Jesus talks about parables, they listen, but they don't understand. They hear the stories, but they don't get it. But now, ears are being opened. These people, it says in chapter 4, they honor God with their mouths, but that's not a reflection of what's really in their hearts. But the time is coming when they will honor God and speak of God and it will come from their hearts, not just from their voices. And so this healing, of course it's a miracle, of course it happened, but it's also acting out Jesus' impact. The man is playing the part of Israel and the part of the world who now hear Jesus' words and understand what God is doing. When people hear and obey and speak of God in a way that's true, that comes from the heart, that's the time of fulfillment. And so the question comes back for each one of us. Who does Jesus think he is? Who do we think he is? What's it going to mean for him? And what are we going to do about it? Well, it's clear. He's the one who's transforming the world. He's the one who's confronted evil. He is the one who is bringing in God's kingdom. And now the question comes back to us. What will we do with this? We know, I'm trying to get ahead of the story here, but we know what it's going to mean for him. It's going to mean he's going to have to go to Jerusalem and confront the powers of sin and death in their backyard. And it's going to mean he's going to die on the cross, and it means he's going to be, and then God's going to raise him from the dead. That's what's going to happen. That's the conflict. Our question is, which side are we going to be on? Are we going to decide that Jesus is truly God and the one who is representing God in the world? And are we going to take his side? And are we going to accept that once we've understood that, it's going to change our lives completely? And we're going to stop having an allegiance to anything else and recognize that God is our God and our King? Is that who we're going to be? Because that's what Mark is asking. And to understand Mark is to understand that there's a cosmic battle and that each of us has to decide whose side we're on. And I urge you, in this battle, there's only one winner. For goodness sakes, pick the winning team. Choose God. Choose Jesus Christ. Believe in him. Allow him to forgive you and turn your life around. Respond by following him. If you're in a conflict like this one, it falls to all of us to choose a side and stick with it. Choose Jesus.